Well, I will note that multiple Democrats, and including Professor Vladeck, claimed that the purpose of this hearing was intimidation. And I do find some irony in that, particularly given the last 4 years we've seen Senate Democrats engage in a shameless effort at intimidation that featured, among other things, Chuck Schumer standing on the steps of the Supreme Court, threatening to unleash the whirlwind, threatening violence, calling out justices by name and threatening violence if they ruled in the Dobbs case in a way that Democrats did not like. There is a reason that the Biden Department of Justice did not enforce 18 U.S.C. Section 1507, because every Democrat on this committee agreed with the violent protesters committing felonies. They did not like the decision. They wanted judges intimidated, and I would point out the ranking member takes great joy slandering Justice Clarence Thomas. He has done so in this hearing room more times than I can count. That, again, is a very open intimidation campaign cheered on by left-wing dark money outfits that want to attack Justice Thomas. It is my opinion that Justice Clarence Thomas is one of the finest jurists to have ever sat on the bench, and the intimidation effort against him is utterly shameless. One of the more ironic ones is they focused on that he accepted travel at a time that the rules did not require disclosure of travel, without acknowledging that left-wing justices like Stephen Breyer accepted much, much more travel from left-wing Democrat billionaires, and yet they're happy to engage in hypocrisy. At the end of the day, this is not about generically disagreeing with particular merits rulings of judges. This is about two judges whose behavior violated their judicial oath. And I would note, number one, Judge Boseberg. Not a single Democrat on this committee, nor Professor Vladeck, could present any basis for his signing these orders concluding that 20% of the Republicans in the Senate would violate the law. Now, there's a reason for that. He didn't know who the hell he was signing this about. So understand, this judge signed an order. Let me say, you at home, if you voted for Donald Trump, understand this partisan hack would have signed this damn order for you too. Because the only thing you knew about it is it's a Republican, and that may be fine if you're a wild-eyed partisan. That may be fine if you're a loudmouth on social media. That is not fine if you are an Article III judge appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate. You have an obligation to follow the law. I asked Professor Vladeck, is there any conceivable basis on facts given what he knew? And he agreed. If the Justice Department did not present a factual predicate, I believe they did not, that this was a violation of his judicial oath. Now, Senator Whitehouse has said, let's bring Jack Smith to testify. Fabulous. You know what? We're going to. Be careful what you ask for. Clearly, the talking points went out to Senate Democrats. Let's call for Jack Smith before this committee. I promise you, Jack Smith is coming. Chairman Grassley has made clear he will testify under oath in front of this committee as soon as the due diligence and deposition process is over. But that will happen, and I would like it to happen sooner rather than later. And you better believe I'm actually quite glad because Senator Whitehouse said he wants to see Jack Smith's proffer of evidence to justify those subpoenas. I would ask Senator Whitehouse, would you join me in a bipartisan request to the Department of Justice to hand those over immediately to this committee?
Be glad to work with Senator Durbin and the chairman on that, but I think the protocol is that they have the wheel on that.
I would
more. I do believe it was actually Ranking Member Durbin who first proposed it. So
he did not propose handing the information over, and indeed, I want to see every bit of that information. I'll also say the prediction I made about Judge Borman. So look, Boseberg, my Democrat colleagues could get away with screaming Trump, MAGA, January 6th, wahaha. Okay, not actually a response to the fact that he signed an order with zero basis in fact and zero basis in law, but at least you've got some partisan language and bells you can ring. Judge Deborah Boardman, it says something that every Democrat on this committee is too embarrassed to defend in any way, shape, or form the merits of her indefensible ruling. It says something that not a single Democrat said her ruling was not an abomination and a complete dereliction of her judicial duty. And by the way, Nicholas Roske pleaded guilty. There's no dispute. He got on a plane with a gun and a knife and duct tape with the intention of murdering Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And by the way, not just Justice Kavanaugh, but his wife and young children. And every Democrat who preens violence is wrong against judges, just one of you stand up and say it is grotesque to deviate downward by 22 years for a left-wing judge to say, fine by me, you gave a slap on the wrist to this attempted murderer, and not just murderer, assassin. One of the Democrats said, well, gosh, we can't review every sentence in America. That's true. We don't review every sentence in America. If you mug someone in Central Park, we're not going to review that sentence. If you attempt to assassinate a Supreme Court justice with the stated intention of changing the majority on the Supreme Court to change the outcome, my Democrat colleagues love the word insurrection. There is a word for that. That is an actual insurrection. That is attempting through violence and murder to overturn a branch of our government and change the law. And not a single Democrat here can screw up the courage to condemn it. They can say, oh, all violence is wrong. And yet Judge Boardman's stated reason for letting this psychopath out at age 35 as well, he says he's transgender. And I guess in today's Democrat world, if you say you're transgender, no problem if you try to assassinate Supreme Court justices, because our party cares more about gender identity than the rule of law. Alice in Wonderland would truly say we've gone through the looking glass.